Chapter 4. A Second Call. It was nearly 6 o'clock when Nancy Drew reached home after her long tramp. She ate dinner and then waited impatiently for the arrival of her father on the evening train. At last she heard his step on the veranda and ran to meet him.
"Well, Nancy, how did you make out while I was gone?" Carson Drew asked, as he dropped his briefcase on the table. "Everything go all right?"
"Oh, Dad, the meanest old man came to see you." Quickly, Nancy poured out the story of her encounter with Nathan Gombet. Her father listened gravely until she had finished.
"So he came here to bother you, did he? I'm sorry you've worried so much about it. Next time, don't let him in."
"But, Dad, there's nothing to what he says, is there? You don't owe him any money?"
"Not a cent, Nancy."
"That's what I thought. But why did he make such a fuss?"
"Because he's a natural troublemaker, I guess. You see, some time ago, Gombet's land was condemned for the railroad right-of-way. I was on the land commission, and I saw to it that Gombet was well paid. He seemed satisfied with the deal which was made. But after the bridge went up, he began to pester the commission for more money. Claimed that the bridge had damaged the rest of his property, and I don't know what all. I didn't pay much attention to his claims because they were ridiculous. He's only a sorehead."
"He's been making some ugly threats, Dad. It's said he talks about blowing up the bridge."
"A man in his right mind wouldn't go around telling things like that," Mr. Drew said, with a troubled frown. "I think I'd better keep an eye on him."
"You'll be careful, won't you, Dad?" Nancy pleaded. "I'm sure he means to do you harm."
"Yes, I'll be cautious," Carson Drew promised smilingly. "But I'm not afraid of Nathan Gombet. I know how to handle him. What worries me is the way he came here bothering you. If he should ever try to harm you—"
"Oh, I'll probably never see him again," Nancy said lightly. "At least I hope I never shall." As she spoke, her eyes turned toward the window, and what she saw caused them to dilate in horror. "Oh!" she gasped. "There was someone at the window just then. I saw the face distinctly. It was Nathan Gombet."
"You must be mistaken," Carson Drew protested, as he too glanced toward the window.
"No, I'm sure of it, Dad. There's someone on the porch now." Even at that moment, there came a sharp rap on the door. "Don't go," Nancy whispered. "I know it's Nathan Gombet, and I believe he means to harm you. He may have a gun."
"I may as well see him now and get it over with, Nancy. I'll not have him snooping around here."
Resolutely, Carson Drew walked to the front door and flung it open. The light from the living room revealed Nathan Gombet.
"Well," Carson Drew demanded, "what do you want here?"
"You know what I want."
"What you want and what you may get are two entirely different matters. Come in. I have something to say to you."
Mr. Drew permitted the man to enter, but did not offer him a chair. He looked Nathan Gombet straight in the face, but the man could not return the straightforward gaze. Involuntarily, he lowered his eyes.
"Tell me what you mean by coming here and bothering my daughter," Mr. Drew asked curtly.
"I came after my just due."
"Let me tell you something. If you bother Nancy again, I'll turn you over to the police. Get that straight."
"I want my rights."
"Your rights? What do you mean by rights? You've had more now than you deserve."
"You cheated me. My land was worth several times what I paid for it. Either I want the deed back or I want my price."
"So you were trying to get the deed when you rummaged in my desk this afternoon?" Mr. Drew demanded severely. "Well, Nathan Gombet, it won't do you a particle of good if you do get your hands on it."
"What do you mean?"
It has been recorded.
Then I want my price.
Why, you're crazy, man, Carson Drew snapped with growing impatience. The commission gave you your price once, and an exorbitant one it was, too. If the railroad hadn't wanted your land, you couldn't have sold it for a dime.
The railroad had to have my land. I could have had anything I wanted to ask.
You're mistaken, Mr. Gombet. Charging all the traffic will bear doesn't go anymore. Anyway, the bridge could have gone across the river at a point south of your land without costing the railroad a cent more money. You were lucky that they bought your property at any price.
The bridge damaged the rest of my land.
Damaged it? Carson Drew smiled. In what way?
Well,
Nathan Gombet began to stammer. Then he thought of something.
The trains scare my horses.
How many horses have you?
Why, one.
Oh, you have 1 horses? Mr. Drew smiled broadly, and Nancy could not hold back a giggle.
Don't you dare ridicule me,
Gombet snorted. I am not ridiculing you, Mr. Gombet. I am merely trying to bring you to reason. If I recall correctly, your horse is an old nag that couldn't even bat an eye at a train. At all events, your fight is with the railroad, and not with me.
You drew up the papers.
I was merely acting as an agent.
I don't care what you say. I know you and your scheming friends are trying to swindle me out of my property.
I don't know how you came by such a silly idea. The Land Commission is very fair in all their dealings. What you ask is most unreasonable. As far as I'm concerned, the matter is closed.
Not much it ain't. I was swindled out of $10,000.
Carson Drew laughed shortly. It is useless for us to talk further, I see. I am convinced you are trying to work a graft, but you've come to the wrong place this time.
If you don't give me my money, I'll...
None of your threats. Mr. Drew cut him off sharply.
Now get out of here. Give me my money.
Not a cent.
That's final.
Absolutely. Nathan Gombet faced Carson Drew with clenched fists, and his features were distorted by rage. Nancy, who stood a short distance away, was fearful lest he attack her father. But Mr. Drew showed no signs of flinching, and Gombet was not overburdened with courage. He preferred to obtain his ends by underhand methods. He turned abruptly toward the door, but before he reached it, he wheeled upon Carson Drew again. Nancy thought that he looked like a wild animal making its last stand.
Take warning, Carson Drew, he muttered. If I don't get my money, I'll do something desperate.
With that, he slammed the door and vanished into the night. Oh, Dad! What did he mean by that? Nancy cried, as soon as the door had closed behind the man. I'm afraid he'll do something terrible. Perhaps blow up the railroad bridge. I don't believe he'd dare attempt that, Nancy. Nathan Gombet isn't a very courageous man. Then he'll try something underhanded. I know he will. You may be right about that, Nancy. He's obsessed with an idea, and there's no talking him out of it. An idea? I'd call it a mania. Perhaps that's a better word to describe his state of mind. I'm afraid he'll try to harm you, Dad. I'm not afraid of him, Nancy. I know you're not, but he's a tricky sort of enemy to have. Promise me you'll be careful, won't you? I'll promise, Nancy. Now don't worry about it any more. Nothing will come of the threat, I am sure. Mr. Drew picked up the evening paper and began to read as unconcernedly as though nothing had happened. Nancy found it impossible to follow her father's example. She was dreadfully worried. for she was afraid her father did not consider Nathan Gombet seriously. Oh, how she did hope he would be cautious! End of chapter 4.